Australia's general elections are just around the corner. For the year 2025, it will happen on the 3rd of May. And many of international students and new migrants might be wondering, how does Australian political system work? In this short guide, we'll explain that for you. Without wasting much time, let's get into the details. So first thing first, what kind of government does Australia have? Well, Australia is a federal parliamentary democracy and a constitutional monarchy. Now, what does that even mean? So first thing is, Australia is a federation of states and territories, with the federal government, also known as national government, and then state and territory governments. Now, in terms of democracy, citizens have to elect their representatives for the parliament. And in terms of constitutional monarchy, king is the head of the state. So just to make it simple, king is the head of the state, but his powers are limited by Australian constitution. Now, the Governor General represents the king in Australia, and the Prime Minister is the head of the government, who is the leader of the party that wins the election. Now, in terms of hierarchy, king sits at the top, then comes the Governor General, then comes the Prime Minister. So the current king, King Charles III, is the head of state in Australia, but mostly it's just a symbolic. Now, let's look at the levels of government. So Australia has 3 levels of government. The first one is a federal government. Consider it like a national government that manages the national issues like immigration, defense, trade, and so on. The second layer of the government is state and territory governments, which manages your schools, hospitals, roads, and stuff like that. And the last level of government are local councils, which take care of your local reserves, parks, and things like collecting rubbish and so on. Now let's move to the next part, which is about parliament and political parties. So Australian parliament has 2 houses, the upper house, which is also called as Senate, and the lower house, which is the House of Representatives. Now, House of Representatives have 151 members, and these House of Representative members actually form the government. And in the upper house, which is Senate, there are 76 senators, 12 from each of the 6 states in Australia, and 2 from each territories. So Australia have 6 states, that is 72 senators from there, and then the 2 states Australia has 4 senators from there. These senators are usually responsible for checking and passing the laws, and these senators usually debate and vote on the bills. Now let's talk about the major political parties in Australia. Now there are 2 major parties you will see here in Australia, but apart from that there are other parties that are quite popular here as well. The 2 major parties are Australian Labor Party and the Liberal Party of Australia. Apart from that, the Liberals also work with another party called the Nationals, and together they form a coalition, which means both of these parties, the Liberal Party of Australia and the Nationals, work together to form a government in Australia. Apart from that, there is the Greens Party, and there are many other independent and minor parties as well. Now, in terms of where do these parties stand in terms of political spectrum, if you look at this graph, the Greens Party usually stand on the left side of the political spectrum. Their focus is usually climate, equality, and social justice. The Labour Party is on the center left, which is about workers' rights, healthcare, and education. The Liberal Party is usually center-right, which focuses on economy, business, and individual freedom. And last, Nationals, they are usually the right wings. Their key focus is usually rural areas, farming, and tradition. Now, the next part is who can vote in Australia and why it matters. Now, it might be very interesting for some of you that the voting in Australia is compulsory for every Australian citizen aged 18 or above. So if you are an Australian citizen 18 plus, you need to vote. However, if you are permanent resident or temporary visa holder, such as international student, then you can't vote in Australia, especially in the federal elections. Now, you may not be voting in the elections in Australia, but it's still very important for you to understand about the political system, as it could impact you as a migrant or an international student, especially in terms of immigration policies and the decisions made by the government of the day. Now, very interesting part, which is about how elections work in Australia. We're gonna keep it really short and simple. The voting is done in Australia through preferential voting. And some of you will be like, what does that mean? So instead of choosing one or the other candidate, voters have to rank the candidates given in the ballot paper. So let's say there are 5 candidates given in the ballot paper. You can't just choose one of them and say that's it. You have to give a rank to each of the candidate given. So if there are 5 candidates, you have to rank them based on your preferences from 1 to 5. 1 being your most preferred candidate and 5 being the least one. And if your preferred candidate does not get enough votes to win, your vote goes to the next preferred candidate. This way, your vote still counts, even if your preferred candidate does not win. Now, election day does feel like a community event where there is usually a sausage sizzle, and polling places are usually located at local schools, churches, and community halls. As I mentioned earlier, in 2025, the elections will be held on May 3rd. And once the voting is over, they start counting the votes, and usually you will get the picture by the end of the night who is the winner of the election. In terms of numbers required to form a government, it's 76 out of 151 members. So whichever party wins 76 seats or more form the government. Sometimes if they're falling short, they could form the government with a collaboration with others. Now here are some key roles in Australian politics. Now, the first one is Prime Minister, who is obviously the leader of the country and is the head of the party in power. So whichever party is in power is usually the head of that party. Currently, the Prime Minister of Australia is Anthony Albanese. Obviously, we don't know who's going to win the next election. It could be Anthony Albanese again, or could be Peter Dutton, or could be anyone else. The another important role is Member of Parliament, also known as in short MPs. They represent your local area or electorate. Then the senators, which represent your state or territory. As I mentioned, there are 12 from each state and then 2 from each territory. And last but not the least, the Governor General, who approves laws and does most of the ceremonies, including the inauguration ceremony of a Prime Minister. You might be wondering, how can you get involved in Australian politics? Especially as an international student. Now, even if you can't vote, you can do certain things. The first thing is volunteering. So you can volunteer for one of the local political parties. You can also join the community discussions that happen around in your local state or territory. And knowing about the local political system will help you feel more included in the society. If you would like to know more about the elections in Australia, I recommend you to check the Australian Electoral Commission's website, which is aec.gov.au. There's plenty of resources available on this website, so highly recommend you to check it out. If you would like us to make a video on some other topics like this, please let us know in the comment section below. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments as well. And we'll try to answer as many as we can. So hopefully that was useful. Now, if you would like to know more about Australian currency, then this video is very detailed and comprehensive regarding that. It's quite an informative video, and thousands of people who have watched it find it quite useful. So click this video over there and I'll see you there.